Next, we have the Kansas Jayhawks. 2023, they were 9-4 and had a lot of optimism coming into this season. Fourth year for Coach Lance Leopold. And the best way I can describe Kansas this year is just weird. Considered one of the favorites in the conference. They were picked fourth in the conference in the preseason poll, and they got off to a horrible start. They were 1-5, but here's the kicker. They actually had a positive scoring margin in those first 6 games. The largest margin that they lost was 38-27 to TCU. So they were 1-5. They were outscoring opponents on the season, and it was just weird. And things would get even weirder. So they beat Houston to get to 2-5. They almost upset Kansas State, and they lost 29-27. But this close loss was the start of an improbable turn for them. Their next 3 games were all against ranked teams, and they won them all. Iowa State, who played for the conference championship, BYU, who ended up, having a really great season, and Colorado, who had a great season. So
BYU was ranked number 6 at the time.
Right. So it was weird. This team that preseason people thought was going to be good, got off to this horrible start, was kind of an anomaly in terms of their scoring, all of a sudden figured it out and beat 3 great teams all in a row.
Well, first off, it's just weird thinking that Kansas is going to be good at football, just in general. But past few years, they've been really, really solid and had some expectations going into this year. But they did take a huge step back. The interesting thing that I thought about just looking at all the games is that all of their losses, with the exception of Baylor, were 1-score games.
Right.
They had a chance to be a really, really good team, but just couldn't pull it off in the early part of the season. But they did finish really, really strong, like you said. And since they did take that big step back and had the expectations, it's one of the rare times again I went with a C.
Yeah. So I did want to highlight that probably their most important game of the year was the victory over Colorado. Colorado came in that game thinking they were headed to the playoffs, and Kansas just stomped them, and it was really, really on the running of Devin Neal. The dude had 204 yards rushing in the game, 3 rushing touchdowns, but not only that, he also had 80 yards receiving and another touchdown. So 284 total yards, 4 touchdowns. Devin Neal single-handedly dashed Colorado's playoff hopes.
Wow.
Yeah. So, like I said, that was a really important win for them. Unfortunately, they did miss out on a bowl game because they lost their last game of the season to Baylor, 45-17. So they ended up finishing 5-7, but they had that crazy stretch of 3 straight wins over ranked teams, all these close losses. I gave them a C+, despite the fact that they had a losing record.
Interesting. So since they only had 5 wins, their record grade is a C+. So that means that the final grade for the Kansas Jayhawks from the Nitro Show is a C.